Hi everybody! So I just want to say and give you a little bit of info. A lot of these episodes were recorded in advance. I tried my best to record a lot of them and pre-record them so that way I have a little bit of leeway in what I'm doing. So I just thought I would make sure that I let you know. So if I miss anything that's like currently happening in the world or I talk about something that might be in the past, that is why. Yeah, so a little bit of stuff that's going on in the world today that was pretty cool and I thought that I would like touch on. There was a 60 Minutes documentary about UFOs being real. And the United States was like, yeah, like UFOs, UAPs, they're real. We know. Are you kidding me? Which is really cool. And I haven't gotten to watch the documentary yet, or the little like expose or whatever you want to call it. But that is major. And also, why? Why are they talking about it now? As like, are the government, are they just like, hey, like this stuff is happening, we're aware, or is it like for some other reason, like, oh, well, we know that a lot of our newer generation don't really like how much we spend on weapons, let's make it seem like we have a new threat that we can fight, that kind of nonsense. Who knows? I don't. I just think it's really cool, and of course I made a tweet about it and all that stuff because I was like, what? Are you kidding me? It's it's really wild, and I really can't wait to watch it. I haven't really stayed up to date on that kind of stuff. I've been doing a lot, and trying to get this podcast stuff on like lock and like get a bunch of stuff together and let's go, and I'm excited. And it's also really nerve-wracking because most podcasts are with multiple people and they're like talking and like have banter, and I'm by myself, and which also makes it a lot for me to figure out how to navigate doing such thing by myself. Which I've been a streamer, like I said, I streamed on Twitch and stuff, so I'm used to talking to myself. But this is a whole different thing. This is a whole different thing, and so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited, but also very nervous. So this topic was really, really cool, and I actually found it by Googling true crime paranormal stories because, okay, so here's the reason why, and I'm gonna try to make myself sound less dumb, if that's possible. I had a bunch of stuff that I knew I wanted to cover, but they're pretty deep. And because I'm recording a couple things in advance, and these are like the beginning episodes so that I can like learn my style and stuff, I was like, okay, I'm going to do small little things, and with the small things I'll get used to doing the big things. So I found a bunch of little tiny things to talk about, or things. I am saying things a lot. Topics to talk about. Anyways, and I thought this was like a cool little segue into the true crime side from the paranormal side. So last week we had a paranormal topic. This week we have like our little middleman who has both, and then next week I'll have a true crime story. So I'm gonna try to do that where, unless it's a very large multi-part type thing, it's gonna be one week after the other, so that way we have a little variety. And also, as much as I'm afraid of paranormal stuff, true crime stuff scares me way more, like way more. And so sometimes you just need a little break and you need to talk about aliens or ghosts or something. So anyways, this week the topic is the Bennington Triangle. Yay! It's in Vermont. So Bernie Sanders, if you've ever been, you need to call me and let me know. Send me an email, something. Tell me if you've ever been. He's never gonna call me. It's fine. So the Bennington Triangle of Vermont was named by an author named Joseph A. Citro. He wrote ghost tales and ghost novels about New England. He coined the name after the Bridgewater Triangle of Massachusetts, which I will also cover one day. So Citro is a folklorist and is sometimes called the Bard of Bazaar or the Ghost Master General, which I think is so freaking cute. And if you guys want to give me a nickname, please do. I want a cool nickname that I can call myself. Like the Bard of Bazaar. I want to be a bard. That's what I play in D&D. I'm a big nerd. He has extensively researched and documented hauntings, ghost stories, paranormal, and occult happenings in New England. He has several novels that are fiction and nonfiction, and he also gives seminars about those subjects, which I think is really, really cool. He has not only named a strange area that's a lot like the Bermuda Triangle, and they all have B names, which is, you know, kind of cool. But he also writes novels, and he's diversifying his income, which we love to see it. We love to see it. So it's a loosely defined area, the Bennington Triangle. It's around a town called, or an area called Glastonbury, which used to be a logging town, which was near the Southeast Mountains, or the Southwest Mountains, sorry. So it was abandoned in the 19th century after the logging boom died. Glastonbury is now mostly untouched wilderness, and it's in a remote area of Vermont, which is remote by even Vermont standards. So there's like a tier list here of like where internet service and such belong, and Glastonbury is not one, apparently. It's like super remote, away from everything. They're like, if you hear someone scream, we're never gonna know. We're not gonna hear you. Which I think that this story too kind of ties into that whole, like, when you are hiking or in an area that is a natural park area, some weird shit happens. And I think that this is kind of a part of that. Which we've all been on TikTok, we've all heard about the disappearances of people in national parks and the theories behind that. And if you haven't, I suggest that you go look it up, because it's really interesting and also terrifying. And I think that this kind of like ties into that. So 78 years ago, there was a string of missing persons cases in this area. The town, which has been the setting of these disappearances, unsolved murders, and weird sightings, they continue even to this day. Like, it has not stopped. Whether or not it has gotten national attention or not, that is a completely different story. So it was mostly uninhabited by settlers before the 1700s. In 1761, the governor of New Hampshire chartered the town. He was like, hey, there's this place, no one lives here, let's move in, let's make it our home. Like, he didn't have New Hampshire already that he could do whatever he wanted to do with. So anyway, by 1791, there were 6 families that lived in this area. They had created their own community. And in this time period, it became a logging town. So in 1870, there was at least 240 people that lived there. By the 1880s, though, unfortunately, overlogging of the mountains had decimated the trees, and the town was in a very sharp decline because all of the jobs revolved around the logging as well as mining, and they just overdid it, and there was not enough resources at that point. So weirdly enough, there are 8 people who still live in this town. If you live near this town or know someone who lives in it, please just email me. The email address to this channel is in my stuff, please email me if you live here. I want to hear I want to hear about it, please. I want to know like the details, or if you live nearby, like please give me the details. So Glastonbury also has a curse. So there's a legend that before these disappearances, the indigenous tribes of that area believe that this land was cursed, especially the woods surrounding it. There was an angry spirit that they believed to have dwelled in the forest, and the tribes basically stayed away from that area. They did not do anything in those woods other than bury their dead, which means to me that there was some stuff happening for a very, very long time that no one can explain. And some of the accounts that I heard were that there is silence, deafening silence in this area, where there's no nature, there's no birds, there's no insects, there's just no sound in this area at all. And that's weird, because if you live in the forest, if you've ever been anywhere near like the woods in general, there's crickets and like snapping of twigs from animals and chittering of like squirrels and stuff. Like there's no way that an entire forest has no sound to it. And I think that's just really, really spooky. I don't like it. There is also like a thought that there are ghosts in this area, as well as like a hotspot for eerie sensations, and I would guess that there would be if indigenous tribes were burying their dead in this area. Perhaps that is a thing. Another local legend spoke about the man-eating stone, which is, it's like there like, think about it, there is a stone in the woods, and the thought process behind this is if someone stepped on the stone, it would swallow them up. They would disappear and never return. They just like, wah, gone, I'm gone, went into an alternate dimension. Who knows? But there are sinkholes in these mountains, or at least people believe that there are, because there were mines and mine shafts. And apparently, as things have settled and that kind of stuff, the holes to the mines have kind of like opened up, and if you're not careful, you could fall in them. Another oddity of Glastonbury are the claims that there are man-made piles of rocks that dot the land. So I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you a really weird story, and I tweeted about this like just this week because it was really odd, and I just want to like explain this to you. So I live in a development that has a bunch of condos and townhomes and stuff like that, but it's all like grass, cement, and wood chips, or like mulch. There are no rocks. And so I went outside and I literally like texted one of my friends who like is into like the occult and like witchcraft and stuff like that, and I was like, so what would bring me rocks? Because right in front of my car, and I'm gonna see if I have the photo, and I will I'll show it here and then show a better photo. No, I got rid of the picture. Anyways, it's fine. I'll find it again. I'll share. I'll put a picture up. Anyways, so there was a pile of rocks sitting in front of my car, like on the walkway before you get to my car. Right in front of it was a pile of little baby stones, and I was immediately like, what gives you stones? Because I don't want to, one, offend whatever it may be, and two, I don't want to mess with the stones and then have a curse put on me, or like some fairies come and like attack me. I don't want any of that. I don't know. I've heard stories on TikTok. I don't want it. And they were just like, I don't know. And so I left the stones there. I have not done anything with them. I don't know if they're still there. I hope they're gone. I don't know where you came from. So they're basically called cairns. They're called cairns, and they are man-made piles of rocks that no one knows where they came from or why they're there. Um, and I believe, um, I believe that there's a reason for cairns. People believe that this area, or cairns in general, will talk about like the thankfulness of being on the correct path. I believe is what the Google says, is that if you it is telling you that you are on the right path, which is absolutely terrifying. That there is this, I don't, look, if any of you have seen these things, just tell me in the comments. I would love to hear it. I want to know. I just want to know. I want to know. So anyways, we're going to get into one of the beginning disappearances of this area. In 1943, there was a man named Carl Herrick, and he was enjoying a hunting trip with his cousin Henry. They were 10 miles northeast of Glastonbury, but the two became separated, and Carl never showed back up on the trail. His ribs, when they found Carl's body, which now in this area there have only been 2 bodies found out of all the disappearances. This is one of them, as well as another that I will talk about later. Which makes this very eerie in general, that there are so many disappearances and there have only been 2 bodies. Like, they have not found bones, they have not found clothing, nothing. And you would think that if there is a body and someone has died, they would eventually find remains, and they have not found any except for 2. When they found Carl's body 3 days later, his ribs were punctured. His ribs, sorry, let me say this correctly. His ribs had punctured his lungs. So something had pushed his ribs in to his lungs, which they found post-mortem, meaning that something must have squeezed him to death. Henry reported that there were bear prints near the corpse, but a lot of experts have said that a bear is not going to squeeze you to death. Like, yes, I know that we've had that whole tale of, like, bear hugs. Like, I get it. But I have never once seen a bear maul a person by squeezing them to death. No, they will bite, they will claw, like, they'll try to eat you, like, but no, they don't squeeze you to death. Which makes it interesting. So in 1945, there was a 5-year span of disappearances that began. So Carl started things off in 1943, but in 1945 was when things really amped up. And this started with the vanishing of Mitty Rivers. Mitty Rivers was a hunting guide who was 74 years old, who was leading a party of 4 hunters around Hell Hollow, which, by the way, what a name. Like, let's just name this area Hell Hollow and, like, expect nothing absolutely weird to happen. Sure, that's what we'll do. Which, by the way, that's not what you would want to name something where nice things happen. But Hell Hollow is in the southwest woods of Glastonbury, where he was suddenly lost. There was an unsuccessful initial search, which many believed was because his knowledge of being able to survive in this area would make him be able to stay out and find his way back to town. So they didn't really search that hard. But that was not the case. Soon after, more than 300 locals and U.S. Army soldiers were dispatched from Massachusetts, Fort Denver. Sorry. Massachusetts is a hard one, especially when you're reading, like, geez. So they combed through the vast wilderness for 8 days following, only to find a spent rifle cartridge that Mitty did use. There was no other evidence that was found. The following year, there was the largest case that I have been able to find of a disappearance, and there was a lot of news regarding this case. Um, and I can really like I can see why. Sorry, I am so thirsty. Like during quarantine, I have not spoken that much, and this is a lot, which is hilarious. My poor vocal cords has to relearn how to speak for long periods of time. Oh, anyways. So, the following year after Mitty, there was the case of Paula Weldon. This is the most infamous missing persons case in Vermont. She was one of the eldest daughters of a well-known industrial engineer, architect, and designer named William Archibald Weldon and his wife Jean Douglas. Paula was an 18-year-old student who went to Bennington College, and she decided to hike by herself during Thanksgiving break when most of her friends at the college had decided to go home. Here's a description of Paula during that night that she disappeared. Paula has a grayish scar on her left knee, a vaccination mark on her right thigh, and a small scar under her left eyebrow. The last time anyone saw Paula, she was wearing a red coat that had a fur-trimmed hood, jeans, and sneakers. She also was wearing a small wristwatch that was gold and a black band that held the watch together. She had on light clothing because it was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, for those of you who are not in the US. But the temperature would drop to about 9 degrees that night, which does not make sense if she had planned to stay out. So the day of her disappearance, she finished her shift at the dining hall, then decided that she was going to change into her clothes to go for the hike. She didn't pack a bag, she didn't pack extra clothing or money. No one believed that she would be gone for more than a few hours. But before she left, she walked down the driveway from the campus, hitched a ride on State Route 67A near the entrance to North Bennington on Route 9. A contractor named Lewis Knapp picked Weldon up and drove her to his house on Route 9, which was 2.5 miles from the trail that she ended up being on. From this point, we don't really know if she hitchhiked, if she walked. There's no information. Also, there was a group of hikers who were walking down the trail as Weldon was walking up the trail, who said that they saw her. She approached them and asked for, questions about the trail because I guess she had not been there before, which, by the way, if you are hiking, do not go by yourself on a trail that you don't know. Just in case. Just saying, this is my advice of someone who has never been hiking. I don't know, but I would say that sounds not smart, so don't do it. So she continued walking up the road, a portion, and then she was, which was called Harbor Road. She walked the trail in the afternoon, and it was presumed that she continued to walk through Bullsbrook Valley. And there were confirmed sightings of her at a place nearby there called Faith Fuller Camp. But there are so many sightings of Paula during this time period that I have so many things to tell you, and none of it makes sense because she is in multiple places at multiple times. And we'll find out later about why that is. So, another sighting claimed that there was a student who walked to see Everett Cave on Mount Anthony. A guide and a student from the Bennington College went up there to find Paula, but did not find anything. I guess at one point she was like, I really want to go visit this cave, and they assumed to check, which thankfully you know, someone was paying attention to where she might have gone. There was also a taxi driver who claimed that he had given a ride to a college student, taking her to a bus stop, but the driver of the bus that would have been there at the time could not confirm her, and the driver of the taxi could not confirm her. There was also a local waitress who claimed that she served a girl that fit the description of Paula on Sunday at 9:30 p.m. The waitress named Aura said that the girl was with a young man who could not be over the age of 25. Paula asked Aura how far away she was from Bennington, Vermont, and told her that she needed to get back, that all she had with her was $1,000 and it was all gone. Aura, the waitress, claimed that Paula did not seem drunk, but she did seem like she was in a daze or not feeling correctly. At 5:30 p.m. At the same day, a watchman named Ernie Whitman saw a photo of, well, rather, I guess this is, at 5:30 p.m., the watchman, Ernie, was watching the TV and saw that they were talking about Paula's disappearance. And so he called and said that he had seen her at 4 p.m. on that Sunday in Woodward and talked to her about the length of the trail. 3 residents had also reported seeing her in Woodford, that she was walking the trail toward a camp called Hunter's Rest, which, you know, it reminds me of a video game. But anyways, strangely, the camp was named by a man named William Luzon, who reported that he had also seen that day 3 businessmen that were not wearing clothing that made sense for the area passing through. They left a suitcase with him, but they did not ever come back to return to pick it up. Like they dropped off a suitcase at this place called Hunter's Rest. William saw them, talked to them, and they just disappeared. What makes it interesting about this area and the 3 men who did not ever come back was that in the briefcase there was information about Mitty Rivers, who had disappeared 2 years earlier. So the authorities kind of came to the conclusion eventually that there were 2 women out in this area who looked like Paula, which makes sense that there were so many people who saw her, but none of it could be confirmed, and they did not know who to trust. There are more here that I'm going to talk about where they believe that they saw her. So Paula was last seen on Sunday, December 1st of 1946. She did not return to her classes that Monday, which means that the college had to tell her parents that she had disappeared. Ernest Whitman, who I had spoken about before, who had seen her, also worked for a newspaper and gave her directions. An elderly couple also said that they saw her on the trail, but when she turned the corner, they reached the same corner and she was gone. There was also a search party of more than 1,000 people that created a $5,000 reward from her parents. Despite the numerous turnout and aircraft and law enforcement, and they literally had law enforcement, Army, National Guard, tons of airplanes in the air trying to find her and could not find a single thing. There were not even any clues. It was just completely like she just vanished. Out of everything that happened, Weldon's father really criticized the lack of sophisticated methods in finding her, because while they had all these people searching, they never found anything. And he believed that it was because at the time they really did not have the tools in order to find them. And also at the time of Weldon's disappearance, there was no state police in Vermont. So the state's attorney and the county decided that they would be finding clues. An investigator named Almo Franzoni was responsible for helping the county to find information. And Weldon's father was just like, that's not good enough. He pressed investigators and the governor at the time, Mortimer R. Proctor, to bring in all of the rest of the crews that I talked about. So not only did they bring in Connecticut State Police Detective Robert Rundle, a state police woman named Dorothy Scoville, and they brought in, like I said, Army and stuff like that. They asked a bunch of questions, they interviewed every person, and they still could not find anything, which, wild, just absolutely wild. The investigators also discovered that there was a lumberjack who might have seen Paula named Fred Gadet, who lived along Harbor Road. Gadet was in an argument with his girlfriend when Weldon walked by. Gadet stormed off, decided that he did not want to have a fight with his girlfriend anymore, and decided that he was going to get in his truck and go up a portion of the trail where Weldon might have been headed. Gadet also lied to police on several occasions, and he was a person of interest for a very long time. From 1946 to 1952. And importantly, Gadet told at least 2 people when he was just like drinking, chilling out. He claimed that he killed her. He said he knew where her body was buried and that it was within a 100-foot like area. But there was no evidence that had actually happened. There was no body, there was no clues. Honestly, it sounds like Gadet just wanted to sound like a badass, but they couldn't find that he was actually telling the truth, which is wild, because why would you decide that, hey, you know what, I'm gonna tell a bunch of people that I killed a girl who everyone's looking for? I just don't understand the motivations behind what he was doing, and I don't know. I'm glad that his girlfriend and him got in a fight, and I hope that she ran away very, very far. Because anyone who's like, yeah, I killed that little 18-year-old, like, sir, like, you need some help. You need help. But anyways, there was a bunch of rumors that had spread as well about Paula. They claimed she moved to Canada with a boyfriend, that she lived in a hag hut in the mountains, which, by the way, I totally would love to do too. Paula, if you are still up in the mountains, you know, you can let me live there too. That she went into the mountains and committed suicide, that she was kidnapped, or that she was murdered. Another really interesting rumor was that she might have had amnesia and suffered from that, and that's why she didn't know who she was. So she was like Goldie Hawn in that movie about her hitting her head on the boat and like moving in with that guy who had kids and becoming his wife. Like, I forget what the name of that movie's called, but that shows my age too, because gosh, that's a really old movie. But what makes Paula's case really interesting is that it is still open. They still have not found any information, but the case is still open. 3 years later, after Paula disappeared, though, there was another case that is pretty interesting. And it's more on the supernatural side, I feel like. Because this is very odd. There was a man named James E. Tedford who was 68 years old. He boarded a bus on his way to Bennington after visiting relatives in St. Albans. He was a veteran and he lived at the Bennington Soldiers' Home. Eyewitnesses confirmed that Tedford was on the bus, including the driver, as late as the last stop to Bennington before the bus pulled, and he was just nowhere. After vanishing into thin air while inside a moving vehicle, by the way, passengers did go and help the search by looking and finding on the seat his luggage and an unopened bus timetable. It was just sitting there on a seat, and he was gone. Um, and honestly, the thing that, and this is just me speculating, is that he might have gotten off the bus and the driver just did not pay attention. But I feel like if that were the case, they probably, like, he probably would have turned back up, unless maybe he had dementia or Alzheimer's, but I could not find any information to state that that is correct. Um, they believe that he vanished in his seat along Route 7, which is through Bennington Triangle. Sorry, I'm gonna take some more drinks of my water. And I'll probably cut this out. I'll cut it out. I just won't make you see me drink all this water. So, in 1950, in mid-October, an 8-year-old named Paul Jepson also went missing. He was last seen playing beside his family pickup truck, where his mother had left to tend the pigs at the dump where they were caretakers. He also was wearing a red jacket at the time, which ties him into Paula's case where she had on red. I tried to look into what the others were wearing to see if red was a commonality, and I could not find any, but I thought it was something interesting to mention because their two cases both were wearing red, and like, yeah, that could be just, you know, no big deal, but thought I would bring that up. So he vanished without a trace, with hundreds coming out to try to find him. The New Hampshire sheriff brought in a bloodhound to sniff out the boy. The dog was able to find a trail, but it stopped cold at a crossroad, suggesting that maybe a motorist could have abducted him. But okay, like, if you know anything supernatural, a lot of stuff happens at crossroads. Even as a kid, whenever I was growing up, and you got like a sty in your eye, my mom would make me do this thing where you take a you take a rock, and it has to be a quartz rock, and like, yeah, this sounds a little like you're hexing people, and I'm sorry to anybody I ever did this to, but it's something like, it's a superstition that my family has always done, and I just thought that this reminded me of that in a way. So you take a quartz rock, and while you're going through a crossroads or a four-way intersection, you say, "Sty in my eye, go to the next one that passes by," and you throw the rock out your window, which, by the way, please do not throw rocks out of the window, Mom. But you throw the rock out the window, and when you do that, it supposedly gives the sty to someone else instead of you, which I am so sorry. I did not know what I was doing, and that was very bad of me, as well as throwing a rock out the window, because I don't know how many cars I have damaged with my rock out the window, and I'm hoping that my mom literally did not make me throw a rock out the window when there were cars behind me. Like, that would just make sense. But, you know, I don't know. The case dragged on without a resolution, and many people gossiped that Jepson was killed by his family to feed the pigs. And the reason for that rumor, I feel like, is because during this time period, the Great Depression and stuff, there was a lot of people going hungry. But your pigs, if you could continue to feed them, you could sell that to make money, and or, you know, send them to slaughter, whatever you needed to do. So keeping the pigs alive was more important probably than your son, which I don't know if that's true, but that was one of the the rumors. And in keeping with the weird feeling of this whole area, Jepson's father mentioned to the Albany Times Union that it was the lure of the mountains that pulled his son away. because his son spoke of nothing but the mountains for days prior to his disappearance, which is weird. But if you think about it, they say that kids are like more tied to the supernatural, that they feel things, they see things, they remember things that normal adults would not remember. But that's really spooky that like a little kid is like, Dad, I'm gonna go to mountains, and then he just disappears. Um, so 2 weeks after Jepson disappeared, there was also another person who disappeared. This was 53-year-old Frida Langer, who was an experienced hiker and survivalist. She went missing somewhere in the Somerset area of the Long Trail that bordered Glastonbury. She was hiking, and after a brief mile with her cousin Hubert Eisner, or Herbert, I think Hubert sounds cooler, but Herbert Eisner, Langer fell into a stream and went back to the camp where her husband, who had a hurt knee, was waiting. But unfortunately, she was never seen again. Helicopters from Connecticut Coast Guard, the U.S. Army of Massachusetts, as well as local aircraft from citizens who lived in the area, as well as the Vermont Aeronautics Commission, went to search for her. Many as 400 people, including the National Guard, went through that entire area for miles. 6 months after this incident, her corpse was found near the Somerset Reservoir, an area that was completely searched. So if her body had been there the whole time, someone would have seen it. But they didn't, which is crazy. Even after the body was found, the case still did not have any resolution because the body had decayed so badly that no one could determine the cause of death, only creating more speculation about her disappearance. So, what we're finding is that people just disappear without a trace, and the two bodies that they found were either decayed, completely mutilated, and still there were no footprints, there was no fingerprints, there was no hair, nothing. And during this time period, I don't believe that they had DNA anyway, so they still wouldn't have been able to really find DNA evidence to find someone who had committed the crime. But I feel like they would have been able, if someone had dumped the bodies, they would have seen footprints or something like that, and there was none. There was absolutely nothing. Which also, like I said, really begs to mention about the national forests and national parks and stuff, how people disappear. Sorry, I'm trying trying to stay hydrated. So there's a bunch of theories about this area, and this is where it gets away from the true crime side and more into the paranormal. They believe that there are paranormal forces at work in this area. UFO sightings have occurred, as well as monster sightings. There is a monster called the Bennington Monster, who was something like Bigfoot, who kind of plagues the area. And there was one story which I thought was really interesting and really funny about a stagecoach in the 1800s that had been on its way through, and rain caused it to stop because the dirt path had washed away. So the driver got out of the stagecoach and noticed footprints in the mud, went around the side, and the passengers were super upset because they saw a hairy creature with no shoes. The beast pushed over the coach, ran into the woods. So there was a Bigfoot, and there were people just sitting outside in the rain screaming because they saw Bigfoot, and he was just like, shut up, and just tossed the coach onto the ground. Like, first of all, same though, because he's probably just trying to enjoy a nice stroll through the woods, and then there was screaming, so he You know, he was just trying to have a nice, calming night walk. But that's just really funny that that was an account that I had looked up. Um, in 1982, there is a myth of a man who worked at a sawmill who hit one of his coworkers in the head with a rock, killing his coworker. The authorities caught the killer and put him in an asylum where he escaped. The rumors say that he had gone into the mountains and became a wild man. There are also stories that he would travel down from the mountains to expose himself to women. So he just like he was like a hairy, unkempt man, decided he was gonna go take a long walk from the mountains to like what, open up his trench coat and be like, surprise! No. Like that doesn't make sense in any like way, shape, or form. Because if I was a wild man, why would I want to go take a long walk barefoot without clothes and just go expose myself and like peep and stuff? Um, but that's one of the stories is the wild man. There are also strange weather patterns that we'll talk about, that there's like really a erratic wind, and that even people who are familiar with the area would get disoriented from the wind because it would kind of like I guess catch you off guard, change the atmosphere, make it harder for you to tell where you're going. I don't know. Others believed that in the 1945 to 1950, when people were going disappeared, when people were going disappeared, when people were disappearing, jeez Louise, what is wrong? They believe that it was a serial killer. But like we know, serial killers usually have a pattern, and there's no pattern here. They're all various ages, gender, and there's no evidence, and eventually a serial killer would get caught. Other people believe that there's a mountain lion, a lynx, or a bobcat that lives up in the area and is just like grabbing people to eat them. Um, which I find like a little strange because I feel like once again someone's ribs were shoved into their body. I don't believe that a mountain lion could do that. Um, and there's no similarities between the cases other than close proximity, the time of day when they were last seen, which is between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., and the time of year, um, which is usually within the last 3 months of the year. So those are the only patterns that they've been able to figure out. Um, but you know, even then, it's really difficult to say definitively that there is anything happening there that with those similarities that would point to any direction. Um, there are also other weird things, like voices showing up on dead radio, mysterious figures, navigation mishaps, and planes that mysteriously crashed. One of the more recent strange occurrences that I found was in 2008, there was a music teacher at Bennington College who was an experienced hiker and claimed that he started where he usually did, on the trail. He knew the trail front and back and claimed that he had done this multiple times. Um, he his name was Singy, and he walked 5 miles the correct direction, but got turned around and could never find his car. A deep fog apparently rolled in, and the trail got really dark, so he couldn't see. He said that he reached a maple tree and stuck his hand out from the tree in the fog to start a fire, but every single stick that he found was an animal bone. Which What? So he's like trying to find a stick while he's underneath the canopy of this maple tree and is just picking up animal bones, which doesn't make any sense. One, because why would there be that many bones in that one spot? And two, later on it says that he did finally start a fire, and I don't know how. I wish I had more information. But he finally started a fire and sat there all night, waiting until the fog lifted and there was enough daylight for him to be able to see his way out. That morning, though, when he finally was able to see, he noticed that he was on the opposite ridge of his car. And he would have been able to see it. He would have been able to see his car or the parking area, but did not. Which, that is the Bennington Triangle. I hope you really liked that story. I found it really, really interesting because not only are there actual disappearances that we have verifiable proof of, but there are also a lot of weird, eerie things that are going on that there's just no explanation for. And if anybody, like I said, lives in Vermont, I would love to hear. I also want to make sure that everyone who is following here on YouTube, check out my Twitter and all that stuff, because I don't have an Instagram yet, and I don't know if I want to, but if I do, I'll let you know. But like, all my social medias are down there. Also in the description, I will also have my sources from what I looked up. So that's why I'm scared this week. I really appreciate everybody coming and watching and all that. And next week is going to be a real true crime story that I'm going to talk about. I have asked on Twitter if there are any true crime stories that you really, really want me to cover in your area, or stories in general that really tickle your fancy. So if you have any of that, please let us know. I would love to hear from you, because I have a bunch that I want to cover. Anyways, so why don't you tell me why you can't sleep this week? And I'll see you next week, okay? Bye.